Hello geeks, and welcome to cityofgeek.com presents Seen Them All, a continuing series here at cityofgeek.com in which one of us goes through the entirety of a franchise, talking about each of the entries as we watch them. This is the first time which I've seen everything in the series before, so you might consider it a little bit of a cheat because I have seen them all theatrically. A couple of these I have seen multiple times, meaning the two over here behind me. The other ones I've seen once when they were first in theaters opening weekend, so I'll be revisiting for the second time before the two entries coming out this year, which is why I'm rewatching this series. The Curse of Llorona comes out April 19th, and Annabelle Comes Home will be released on June 28th of this year. So with the two of those coming out, I did want to revisit everything up to including those two movies. So this review will probably be posted after Curse comes out April 19th, and then with an update when Annabelle Comes Home. Maybe when Conjuring 3 comes out next year, I'll rewatch them all again and update the video of any new thoughts or new entries, but for now we'll just keep it at those. As I noted, I have seen these all before, and for the most part I enjoy much of this franchise. Some entries are better than others, those compared to those. Oh, a ghost did that, and then a ghost put it back up, blinked and it was back, just like your keys those times that you lost it and blamed it on the ghost in your house, right? I just finished watching Conjuring 1 and Annabelle. Normally I do this intro first, then I'll go watch a movie, record it, watch the second movie, record it. But I watched those back to back, and now I'm sitting down to talk. So it won't be the normal cut, won't be like a different shirt, different haircut. This is one. The first film in the franchise, which we get the title of the franchise from, was released in July of 2013, and I love this movie. I think it's easily the best movie in this franchise, and it all kind of goes downhill from there with ups and downs, but this is the high point that really set the bar and set where this franchise is going. The basic plot is Ed and Lorraine Warren are demonologists, psychics. Oh, she's a psychic, he's just a demonologist, right? It's a normal thing you have. And they help out people who need help with particularly rough hauntings. They're known for the one that we see in this movie, the infield poltergeist. We've seen Conjuring 2, which they didn't really have a lot to do with, but we'll get to that when we get to that one. And then helping up the medieval horror hoax with Ann Holzer. I'm a paranormal investigator. I do stuff with Advanced Ghost Hunters of Seattle, Tacoma, along with Kim on the site. So this is something that we're both big into, is the paranormal. And no matter how we see the Warrens here on this film, I'm not a fan of them in real life. That's a whole different topic, but I do want to put that out there that I love the version of the Warrens you see in the films, but the Warrens you see in real life I think are more of little con artistry. We all know that Amityville was a giant hoax, but they went full bore into that. Them and Han Holzer, who has a bunch of books from the 70s and 80s, in which he has bigger conversations with ghosts than any paranormal investigator has ever had. Same thing with Lorraine Warren, who is still alive now. Ed passed away a couple years ago. I do believe she has some psychic ability that she is able to get into something, and then at that point they claim it to be demons, claim it to be something bigger, and then they just run with it. Because as I noted with Han, with her too, the things that they say happen to them, the conversations that they have, the big moments that happen in their stories are far further than any other paranormal investigators like ever had. If you've watched shows like Ghost Hunters or know any personal paranormal investigators, you know that everything is small. The Ghost Hunters does eventually get to the point where everything is big, but that's a whole different thing there. You get a noise, you get a small EVP, you get something moving around if you're lucky. You don't have these giant moments with these huge, the haunting type things happening. And that's an issue I have with them. However, we're talking about movies, and the movie itself is grand. I like the version of them here that's a loving couple that in their world they do have these interactions, and it works for film because it's definitely, if you film an actual haunting, you're gonna have like thick as a cup move. But when you do it for movies, you gotta go big, you gotta go grand, and I think that The Conjuring does a great job of being big and grand without being cloying to its audience. The basic setup for this one is the Warrens go to a house in Rhode Island owned by Ron Livingston and Lily Taylor, and they're there with their 5 kids. And as soon as they walk in, they start having all sorts of things that happen to them. It starts out smaller and then gets bigger till it becomes this very big possession slash haunting slash all sorts of stuff going on. And it's so well constructed. I trusted James Wan to deliver this type of product, and he did. After seeing Aquaman, you know, he could do something really scary. No, I'm kidding with that. I like Aquaman, but still. But he made this year after making Insidious, which is one of the best haunted house movies to come out in the last 20 years. I'm a big fan of ghost movies, paranormal movies. Kim and I did a podcast of ghost movies, so check that out a couple months ago to find more about this franchise, other franchises that we enjoy for great hauntings, or sometimes not so good hauntings, as we talked about. I'm not sure when you're watching this, obviously, but if Crypticon's coming out, come out to Crypticon on May 3rd through 5th at SeaTac, and you can see a panel that I'll be on along with Amy Simon and Adrian Clark from the Stephen King show, and Colleen O'Halloran. The four of us, we talk about paranormal movies as well. If that was in the past, I'm sorry you missed it, but come to next year's. What I think is fascinating about The Conjuring is it's rated R for its intensity, and that's it. There's no blood, very little swearing, nothing sexual. It's all in the design of the scares, and it's so effective that they had to give it an R rating. And I think that shows how much that Juan put care into making this work. You know, he didn't write it. It's written by Chad and Carrie Hayes, who previously wrote the very underrated House of Wax remake, which is actually more of a remake of Tourist Trap. I dig both of those, and the original House of Wax, and the original House of Wax. But their writing sets up a fantastic family dynamic of you really feel for these people. Each of the daughters is decently written enough so they're their own separate characters. I feel many other screenwriters might have made them into 3 daughters instead of 5, but they kept all 5. Along with the family, you feel the struggles and you feel the world, and the scares that they set up that then James Wan turns into film scares are well written enough that they're not just jump scares, that they're not boogies. There are a couple of those in the movie, but they're well earned. The witch on top of the dresser, the clap sequences it's known for. Each of the sequences are well built. They build without being, ooh, here comes the jump scare, which I think really helped for Insidious as well, where they let the camera just roam and set up that you think you're going to see something, and then you do, and then comes the jump scare. There comes the noise for the people in the audience who need that noise in order to get scared, rather than just letting the tone feel the room, feel the atmosphere. When I think about Juan and his direction here, I have to think about like all the other work he's known for. I mentioned Aquaman, but he and Lee Winnell made the first Saw movie. They worked a little bit on a couple of the next 2 or 3, and then they kind of bugged off to their own thing. Between that, Insidious, The Conjuring, and I want to like it better than I actually do, but I keep watching it anyway, Dead Silence. These are all completely different movies, but they all work well in their own way. Yes, I'm a Saw defender, at least at the beginning. As the series went on, it petered off. But it started out really strong with what they set up. Dead Silence, I appreciate the look of it and what they're going for. I don't think it quite worked. And, of course, The Conjuring and Insidious, I love. The feel of The Conjuring, it feels like the 70s horror films. So, yeah, The Conjuring works because Juan isn't pandering to his audience. He's letting them feel it and letting it grow without being ooh in your face. Something that takes a lot of restraint to do. And I think that's why I set off a solid start to this franchise, which then moves into the spin-offs with Annabelle. And we're back with Annabelle. As much as I love The Conjuring, I really don't like the first Annabelle movie. I think it's such a disappointment after how strong that The Conjuring was, that when Annabelle came out, it was everything that Conjuring was not. It's yelling its scares at you with awful characters who make dumb decisions, who ignore everything in front of them in order to get the plot to keep moving forward, with the scares to keep moving forward, oh god, these people are so unlikable. And that's what, after the family and the Warrens, who I said don't like in real life, but they're fine in the movies, set up over here. Now we have our doctor and his wife. You know, the doctor and his wife, who both, I don't know why these people want to be together, because I don't feel any connection with them. I don't feel any connection with them together. They're so unpresent in this movie. that it really throws off everything. And I'll admit, it's hard to make something like Annabelle scary, that you do have to really probably work overtime, because you get ghosts over here that can pop in and out, that can do what they need to do. You get that long feel, I'm about to see something. But here we have a doll, and a doll that doesn't move. It's not like Chucky where it talks or it moves around, because when you do that and it doesn't quite work, it comes off really silly. So I see what they're doing with not having her move, but then they create, you have to have this doll in the scene, and if you can't make it look spooky as an existing creature that's not a real creature, it's really hard to pull off. Like John Carpenter pulled it off in Christine. You have these shots and you just feel the menace coming off of Christine, even though she's just a car sitting there in a garage. You never feel that for Annabelle. She kind of looks a little silly with how evil she looks. Because if you don't know, the real Annabelle doll that the Warrens have, no matter if you feel it's actually haunted or not, is a Raggedy Ann doll. This plain, innocent, evil in its banality, Raggedy Ann doll. It's like if Link over here was haunted. It's different than the haunted Michael Myers mask. This thing looks scary. This doesn't. This is cute. And that's why the first Annabelle, the real Annabelle, is kind of freaking weird, because many houses have Raggedy Ann dolls. Not everyone has this oversized porcelain that's looking evil doll. And I understand rights issues, that I think a lot of times here is the audience wants that. Now this version of the doll is in this movie, and but she wasn't ever meant from that first scene to open up The Conjuring to introduce the Warrens and give us a little mini jolt before they start telling the story. It was never really meant, I don't think, to be its own franchise. And now has 3 entries coming up. This one, Ndebele Creation from 2 years ago, and then Annabelle Comes Home, which is going to be at the end of this video if you're watching it later, or will be upcoming from the first time I post this. There's so much I don't like about this movie, because I hate the wasting of Alfre Woodard, essentially there to give exposition, help out the family, and then sacrifice herself, because I have nothing to live for. She literally, she exists to give exposition and then die at the end. There's no real character for her. We've seen everything in there before otherwise, throwing away the doll, it comes back, getting creepy vibes, and with the split narrative of, not really split narrative, split locations of starting the film in suburbia, with the neighbors having getting killed, and they move. When they move, it kind of throws off the pacing of the show. Its actual mythology is different than it was first time around, and it changes through this one, and it changes again in the next movie. And without solid setups, it's more of a boom. Here's the ghost. Ooh, that's supposed to be creepy. Something I've seen before. It just all falls flat. There's so much that feels like it wants to be Rosemary's Baby, but not quite understanding what made Rosemary's Baby work. Now it's a completely different plot, but there are aspects, the haunted apartments, the shot use, everything feels like it's ripped from somewhere else. So I'm not gonna keep going on about what I didn't like about Annabelle. There's better movies in the franchise. It just didn't work for me. Other people seem to really enjoy it. It does have pretty bad reviews at Metacritic, but I see a lot in the community, people enjoying it more than I do, and it's a stepping stone to get to better parts of the franchise. So I'm just gonna leave it at that, and we'll return after I watch Conjuring 2. And we're back after watching Conjuring 2. A couple notes before we get going there. Obviously I'm in a slightly different location than I'm normally recording at in the other room. I'm reorganizing everything around where I sit for that, so it's kind of messy, so I popped over here where I normally do my Stephen King stuff. I'm a little bit off and normal, but I don't worry about fixing that at the current moment. And it's been a little bit since I did watch Annabelle, because I was waiting to get Conjuring 2 from the library. Unfortunately, that shortens the amount of time that I have to watch everything before the Curse of Llorona comes out tonight, Thursday. So I'm going to try and get through, I just watched Conjuring 2 and try and watch Ndebele Creation and The Nun tonight before Cody comes to pick me up. If not, I might be watching The Nun tomorrow when I get home from everything I need to do, so watching things a little out of order. But anyway, so on to Conjuring 2. The sequel to The Conjuring picks up with the Warrens about 6 or 7 years after the first movie, picking up with them after jumping off to a prequel with Annabelle, and now we're returning to the main series. So James Wan does return, a lot of the writers return, everyone's back. From the Warrens, everyone, now Lily Taylor and her family aren't in this. This is about the infield haunting, late 70s. Famous poltergeist, famous haunting. There's a lot of different things going on there, which I'll get talked about in just a moment. So when Conjuring 2 came out originally, I loved it just as much as like the first. I found it maybe a little bit below. I didn't kind of get a lot of the criticisms that people were talking about. Thought people were kind of jumping in on a backlash on it since the first one hit so well. There's no way the sequel will be as good. Now watching it again a couple years later, because it came out in 2013, now it's actually it came out in 2016, now it's 2019. I can see a lot more of those criticisms. I see a lot of the cracks in the walls than we did the first time I saw it. Looking at it a couple years later in a different context, maybe just because it's different atmosphere, watching alone on my couch compared to a filled theater. It's still a great movie. It's still a really well-made haunting flick, but I definitely don't hold it in as much high regard as I did the first time I saw it. The first Conjuring was 1 hour and 45 minutes. This one is 2 hours and 15, so it's a little overstuffed, a little overlong. It has the same issues that movies like Iron Man 2 have, where we're starting to build a universe, so a lot of stuff is forced in there in order to set up sequels, set up ideas. You got the Crooked Man, you got a lot of stuff with Valak the Nun, who's becoming more of a kind of a big bad of the series. Bonnie Aarons is great with that, with the look, and she's really cool. In terms of the best sequences of the movie are the Nun, even though those were actually added in afterwards in order to help build this franchise and making it, why don't we make it big? But that's still, the Crooked Man's apparently supposed to have his own movie coming out soon. I haven't heard anything since the announcement. The Nun, of course, has her own movie. Annabelle references. So besides being a little overstuffed, I really was annoyed by the blue filter over the entire movie. It's so funny that has that blue filter, because it's there, it's present, and then they bring a Elvis record in because the family, the dad had left them and took all the music. So now last time the Ed to jump in and do his thing, and it's this big bright cover, and it's like so out of place with the way that everything's been shot before. I know it's probably exactly on purpose because this music's bringing light into their home, and after this, when everyone starts to open up the lights, it's not as dark as a filter on there, and it's not as much in the family. It is in their house, not as much as in the Warrens. So the Warrens, I said that earlier on that I do have some issues with them personally, with the way they do treat paranormal investigations. But I do love the film versions of them here. They're such a great couple and so well written, and they have such chemistry. And in the actual infield haunting, they had very little to do with it. They popped in, they kind of looked around a little bit, and then they left. This is really more of the British investigators who were there, and their stories are really interesting. Read the book, This House is Haunted, watch the other infield stories to find a better take on everything. That being said, as we are in the film, it works really, really well. The family kind of feels like the same dynamic from the first movie, but different, but it doesn't feel like a carbon copy. The scares are all incredibly well done, particularly the scene with the nun in the studio where she's painting against the wall, and then you see the shadow come in. These things could be very trite. This could be like just repeating the first one, but I appreciate that everything that happens is different than it was the first time around. We're not repeating scares. We're not just redoing the original in a new way. And the infield haunting itself it's well known within the paranormal community, and it's been featured in many other films. There's the infield haunting from 2015 that came out right before this one. I haven't seen that. I heard it's solid, but I definitely want to recommend 1992's Ghost Watch, now on Shudder. It showed once on BBC using actual BBC personalities investigating a haunting like the infield one, and it scared so many people, War of the World style, that they never showed it again until it appeared in Shudder a couple years ago. Now the War of the Worlds, it's kind of its own legend around it. No one was actually scared. There's like 2 people called in, but this one actually did cause the panic, and it's because it treated like it's an actual thing. If you didn't see the first beginning where it says it's a fictional program, you're going to be completely confused and brought into it. So go check that out on Shudder if you're looking for the same basis of haunting but completely different story. That's something I did want to recommend, because you can't mention infield or a version of infield without mentioning Ghost Watch, how well they do it. The one in Conjuring 2 is a solid recreation of it. It gets a lot of the feeling of everything that happens, the recreation of the photos, the recreation of how the haunting went, including the parts where it turns out they faked a little bit, so it had a little questioning there. I will point out the sequence where the girl, they're doing the seance and the girl's in the chair where the dude died, and it slowly morphs into him, and it never leaves, never cuts away. It stays on Ed with this blurry figure in the background, and that's the simplicity of that sequence shows how well that Juan's able to set this up, how well the performances are, how well he's able to get to the tone where nothing technically happens in the scene. It's all talking, it's all a seance. It's all this one shot where there's nothing flying around. It's just a voice and a ghost in the chair, and it's terrifying. And that simplicity really works, and it's something that shows that he has the respect for the audience that I mentioned in the first Conjuring. For that, Insidious, have how much respect he has that the audience will come along. You don't need to run out and jump scare at that. The scene doesn't have to end with the guy leaning forward going "Rawr." The jump scares are there, but they're all well earned. They're well performed. Besides, say, the Crooked Man and stuff like that, where it's obviously meant to bring in all this extra stuff. So The Conjuring 2, not as good in retrospect, but is still a solid film. Ndebele Creation. After watching the first Annabelle movie a couple times now, and being very disappointed to it, I came into Annabelle Creation with very low hopes. I didn't know where else we can go with this. It's kind of played out. We've gone back into our past, we've gone this, and now this time we go even further back to make it a prequel to the prequel. So this is really Annabelle 0. I've written as 2 and 0 depending on the context when I've talked about it in the past. So coming in with low expectations, I think it really helped build the movie because I really enjoyed this one. I don't like it as much as the first 2 Conjuring movies, but I think it's easily the best of the main series. The only real issues are the constraints that it has to follow in order to line up with everything else we've seen before. I feel that if the writer Gary Dauberman and the director David Sandberg had a little more freedom of an open-ended story, I think they could actually gone a lot further. They could have made something a little better without having to follow into these certain things that they had to do. In this prequel to the prequel, we get to see kind of how the doll came to be, of why someone creates such an ugly damn doll in the first place, in which the doll maker, we get to meet his wife and his daughter, Annabelle. When she's killed by a tragic accident, they kind of pull away from the world for 12 years until letting in a nun and a bunch of orphans move into their house, and they seem really this is always surprising both times I watch this now that they don't seem like they want them there. Why would you bring in 8 girls, 6 girls, whatever it is, if you're not going to pretend to be anything but annoyed that they're there? Like the Annabelle's mom stays in her room most of the movie, and the dad is just, you know, grumbling at everything. It's like, why? Besides, to get an isolated situation where we can meet these characters and let them kind of grow into themselves and become, actually we have good characters. We have a group of, we have orphans and a nun who conveniently went to Romania several years ago, where she met a convent of cloistered nuns, and there's a weird one in the photo. I wonder if that's a setup for another movie. Anyway, leading it is a girl named Janice who has polio, so she can't move very well, so she's has some issues with that. And her sister, played by Lulu Wilson, who was also in the Ouija prequel, which is better than the movie that came before it, after it. And that was directed by Michael Flanagan, and he also put her in the House on a Hill redo. Like last year, she played the young version of Shirley. I don't want to get into specific moments of the plot and ruin it for if you haven't seen it, because if you might have avoided it for now being, fuck, it's Annabelle 0. I have no interest in this. The first one sucked. I don't like the series. And now maybe for some reason you're watching this, like, yeah, maybe I'll go check it out. It's directed by David Sandberg, who's gone on to make Shazam this year. Completely different types of movies. He also made Lights Out, previous to Annabelle Creation, and that's why there's an Annabelle doll in the beginning of Shazam. All 3 of these movies are solid works. Lights Out was not quite there. I like the idea, than it more like the execution, but I can see good work coming from him there. And we see that again in Annabelle Creation. There's a lot of great setups, a lot of wonderful camera use, the way the lighting is, so his DP and his lighting people work really well with him to get this, to give the look that he does. The handprint comes from the story and the story alone, of having to do this with everything they've set up. And I said that before, I know it's a repetition, but that's what's really holding me back from really enjoying this movie more, because I feel like this could have been a better movie if it wasn't an Annabelle movie. All in all, it still has great sequences, it's decently scary, it's got good characters, and it was a step up after the last Annabelle, which makes me hope that Annabelle Comes Home may be solid as well. The Nun! We are back with the third movie today in the Conjuring franchise that I'm getting through. So now I've finished them all before I go see Curse tonight, so I have that all in my head coming into the new movie. No, I'm not going to rewatch all these movies again before Annabelle Comes Home in a few months. I'm going to sit with this, and then Curse to come out tonight. But The Nun, yeah, last year when Cody and I went to see it, it was one of the early reviews for the site. We each wrote our own review. You can check it out at cityofgeek.com. I didn't care for it too much. I thought it had a lot of good ideas that weren't completely done, that were ruined by setup and then jump scare. And I came out of it being whatever. And almost like the Conjuring 2, revisiting that brought it down a notch. Revisiting The Nun today, actually, I liked it a little better than I did the first time. Maybe because I knew where everything was going and I knew where my disappointments were, that sometimes just the different situation works. Like this time watching it in my living room compared to a screening crowd, maybe that worked better and let it to flow and feel better and kind of get to me. It's still never particularly all that scary, so it didn't really get to me in that way, but I can see why it worked for other people. I found the jumpy scares to be less intrusive and less annoying this time, though I do think that they're overused. Particularly, like, I was thinking of the chapel sequence about 45 minutes in the movie where Tisa Farmiga, sister of Vera Farmiga, who plays Lorraine Warren, unrelated characters in this. They just happen to be sisters and outside the movie life, where she's looking around the exterior chapel of this abbey that she goes to. I didn't mention the plot. I probably should mention that real fast if you haven't seen it. It takes place in the 50s, in which a young nun who's about to take her vows travels with a priest to visit a cloistered convent in Romania with this amazing location, and I love the look of it. There might be a demonic entity, the nun of the title, Valak, who we've seen in other movies, and they have to face this nun, well, trying to get information from the nuns who live there after one commits suicide outside, and no one from the local area wants to go in, so they send in, so the Vatican sends in these, the priest, our young, almost nun, and a guy named Frenchie, who I'm just going to say here is the guy possessed at the beginning of the first Conjuring, so it comes back full circle. But they're looking around the first night, and she goes to the chapel, and she's walking around, she's doing a circle, and you see the shadow, you see the nun first in the background without mention, and then the shadow kind of falling around, she follows it, and it comes into the mirror, and she sees like it start to form behind her, and that's when she turns around and goes, "Rawr!" And if it let it stand as it was, and maybe just the nun coming a little closer and then vanishing, it would allow it to be more subtle, allow it to build and kind of get the tension. When the creatures jump out and yell, it's just not solid work. And it sucks that those are put in, and it feels almost like a producer controlled thing, because when it's not doing that, when it's actually everything up to the last moment of each sequence works pretty solidly. There's a lot of really cool moments later on with the nuns. Spoiler, they're all dead, so we find out later these are all ghost nuns, and there's pretty cool designs with them, and then trying to figure it out as it's going on. It almost feels like a Hellboy story. I said this in the review. You know, you get this giant abbey where a duke founded it years in the 1500s, did some human sacrifices and brought back a demon, and now these ghosts are trying to keep him in. And then when you see them normally, then you see them with the dried out skeleton faces. It was so Hellboy in design, and it's a better take on Hellboy, I guess, than the movie that came out last week. My review for that's on the site here, so go check it out. And it's a piece of shit. I'm sorry. The new Hellboy is awful, but that's a whole nother review. But The Nun I liked better because I knew those bad scares were coming, so maybe I was able to temper that. Tisa Farmiga is great. She's always good in nearly everything she's in. I like the other performers. I still think Frenchie's kind of useless to the plot, and now watching this time, I know where he is factoring in later. And he seems to be the character that all the audience likes, but I find him annoying and a lot of his jokes dumb. I liked it better just the priest and the nun in this big empty convent. I like the design of the convent. It reminded me of various, if it's Italian, but this is some of European nunploitation movies or This the design is pretty cool. I personally like these giant castles and abbeys and ruins that are all peppered over the world in Europe, and just like to look around them. And when you can see something like that, even though I'm sure it's a set, it's still cool to look through because it's something I personally like. And so bringing that in there, it didn't feel like a cheap set. It didn't feel like just some backlot. It felt like they put a lot of effort into this. Corin Hardy, who directed this, directed The Hallows a couple years ago. I didn't like it as much as Kim and Tony when I saw it with them at SIFF, but it's still a well-made film. I thought it was almost there, but needed a couple more steps. But I need to revisit that, and maybe I'll like it better this time because everyone else seems to enjoy it. So The Nun, it's almost a misfire. In second viewing, it was a better movie than the first time around, but it's still not great, but I see the ideas there. And I like Bonnie Aarons as Valak the Nun. She's great. She puts a lot of effort into making a spooky character out of what could be generic, oh, it's a scary nun. But her face and the makeup on her and the way she moves, it really sells it. So even if other parts of the movie are kind of iffy, her work there is great. The Hellboy-ish plotting and backstory is pretty cool. It goes pretty at it. Like, it starts out with a nun killing herself and there's blood everywhere. That's not nothing. It's like, oh, there's blood, but it's not CG blood like in Hellboy. And it's a great mood and tone that does get built by Hardy that unfortunately is ruined by the jump scares. Ignoring the jump scares is a pretty okay movie. Revisiting it, I think I gave it a C the first time around. Maybe I'll give it a B minus, C plus. And we're back with The Curse of Llorona. As I said, I've been messing up the entire time. I'm not going to say curse from here on out. I don't want to screwing that up and making anyone mad because it's just my mouth won't say it right. So I do apologize. So Curse is the last of the series so far. Annabelle Comes Home comes out in a few months. It's the last that will be in this video until that comes out. Then I'll see if I can add on that. If not, it'll just be a link that I'll edit to that review. And this is... I didn't like Annabelle, but it's better than this. I did write up a full review when I got home from the movie last night. I'm doing this recording the next day. Normally I like to do these as soon as I finish watching the movie, but it was 12:30. My wife was asleep. I was tired, so I put out the first draft, and I finished it up and posted it. So go to cityofgeek.com for a full written review of the movie to pair with this off-the-cuff spoken review, because I'm going to try and keep this short because everything's over there. Try to keep this video from going too long. So yeah, this movie sorry, it's not good. I know that's a bad criticism. It sucks and move on. But it's so underdone and underwritten that it doesn't even feel like it's a complete movie. It feels like it's a first or second draft that they need to build more into, but they never got around to the rest of it. The plot is in 1973, Linda Cardellini is a social worker with 2 kids and a recently deceased husband, where she comes across one of her caseloads who has pulled her kids out of school, and then she takes the boys away because it looks like she's abusing them. The mom, not Linda. And then the boys die drowned in the river. They think that the mom did it, but we know that it's the ghost. The longtime Mexican urban legend of the weeping woman who drowned her kids in the 1600s and now finds kids to drown in the woods. It's usually like a, you be good or otherwise we're going to send her after you type thing. Now you do notice there that Linda Cardellini is a very white woman. She's and she's our lead here, which is problematic. Now the dead husband is of Hispanic descent, so the kids are, but we still have a white woman being the lead in a Mexican folktale. That is an issue. I really wish that we did keep this either in Mexico or with Hispanic or Mexican families. Now so there is definitely that hanging over the movie where it doesn't seem like she should be the lead of this. Where everyone else in the movie is Hispanic, and then you get this one white woman in the center of it, and that definitely feels like appropriation in so many ways. I really wish the movie would have stood with the first mom or someone else, or seeing how this community reacts. There's notes of Candyman in there when you have a person from outside the community coming in and taking in a urban legend of the community. But Candyman, that's kind of what the movie's about. That's not what this is. This is more of oh, we need to have a white woman in the lead, otherwise people aren't going to go see it, and not using cultural appropriation as the basis of the rest of the plot of what the woman in Candyman's doing. But the movie itself is very underwritten. There's not a lot going on. After the first mom's kids get killed, the ghost moves on to Cardellini and her kids, and that's really where it's the rest of the movie. They're haunted a little bit. The ghost messes with them, and then they get the local priest, the priest from Annabelle, sends them to Raymond Cruz, who played Tuco on Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, as a former priest, now general shaman type person, to help fight the Weeping Woman. And that's really all there is to it. We get a little bit of backstory, Gillis. I do appreciate not doing the second act of going and find her, your secret, and finding her past. It's more of ex-president, and here it is. But unfortunately, she only has like 2 moves. Every scare sequence is set up in the same way, where she gets closer and closer, the mirror cracks, and she roars at you. And maybe she throws you across the room. And that's really where it comes to. It happens, the same sequence happens again and again and again. It felt like this should be a short film that's now a feature length. And I'm mentioning short films, and now I'm all over the place here. Check out the director, Michael Cheeve's short film he made 2 years ago, The Maiden. I saw it at Bone Bat 2 years ago, and I loved it. It's one of my favorite shorts of that year. So I was really excited to see what he'd be doing here. Now, I almost feel like his hands were tied. You almost see what made The Maiden work, but maybe this is like, hey, it's my chance to do something mainstream, something bigger. I'll take this and see where things go from here. Almost like Corbin Hardy and The Nun, where I can see where the Hollow is there, and then he makes this with this, being cramped on. Maybe from this he can move on to something bigger. And that's what I'm hoping happens here. Hoping this doesn't damper Mr. Cheeve's career and allows this to be his stepping stone to something bigger and better, or maybe he has more creative control. But there's a lot of stupidity in this movie. Characters have to do dumb things to set up the next thing. Stay in the car. Oh, I'm gonna leave the car. Oh, there's the ghost. Do this, and then hey, don't go outside and don't break this line. I'm gonna break this line, and hey, the ghost is here. So many things just don't work that are just generic setups. Boom, 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 scare. Boom, 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 scare. And it's so rote that you can see everything coming ahead of time. Everyone in the theater was like, you can hear everyone kind of like, oh, here we are. Besides the person sitting next to Kim, who was scared shitless, so I guess it worked for her. But besides her, who maybe hasn't seen a horror film ever before, gets scared really easily, it's gonna be, whatever. I saw that. Bring On Annabelle Comes Home, which actually we'll see where that turns out. So Curse of Llorona is a letdown. It's not scary. She looks like a haunted house performer with her dress, and the way her makeup looks it looks nowhere near as good as Bonnie Aaron's as the Nun, and her scares are just like rawr. So it's a very rote standard movie. I think it's the worst of the series. As much as I didn't like Annabelle, I thought that was a disjointed mess. I don't think this one works nearly as good as that one, which didn't work anyway. So an ultimate ranking of the Conjuring franchise as it is before Annabelle Comes Home comes out later this year, and Conjuring 3 next year from the same director for, I guess this shapes his next thing because he's going to be directing Conjuring 3 next year. So maybe with the Warrens and everything else from there, he'll get better. I didn't mention it before, but unfortunately Lorraine Warren passed away yesterday. So that's coming into that review with this. This is a completely thing, whatever feel the Warren said earlier, they still had an amazing life, and they brought a lot of knowledge to the paranormal field, and get it more into public eye. Even if stuff they did was Amityville, and taking a little credit on the infield haunting, they're still really important as paranormal investigators, even if I don't like a lot of their methods, don't like a lot of their feelings. But it's still a loss to the community over someone who's been a big face for it. So rest in peace, Lorraine Warren, wherever you are. Hope you're with Ed again, and yeah. But this series I'm going to rank here as The Conjuring 1, Conjuring 2, Annabelle 2, 0, The Nun, Annabelle, Curse of Llorona. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed me going through all these movies. We'll see where my next series is. I have a couple different things I'm working on, planning on, both for movies that are coming out Pretty soon we'll be starting the Child's Play series before Child's Play, but I'm also start doing sitting down and blasting through a series anyway to something coming out. So look for those. Check out the Stephen King retrospective on the channel. Go to stevegeek.com, see also working on, and come see us at Crypticon May 3rd through 5th. Thank you and have an excellent day. And like, comment, and subscribe. Like, comment, subscribe. Do it. Do it now. cityofgeek.com. Check out our podcast on iTunes. Subscribe to that. Subscribe to here. And we'll see you for our next video.